I think it's funny because I still say we work front of house and back of house, right? So I still more like, work on the sales and the marketing side and on the overall business. And Alex still does the design and the creative direction and runs the production. So I feel like in some ways we still have those roles, and it's still very team-based, right? So I think there's a lot of teamwork involved, and we're still very much in the industry. Like I see ourselves as an extension of hospitality, and we say like our customers are guests in our dining room. And I think we just try to run the company like it's a hospitality business, and people are our partners, we're not their vendor.
My biggest difference is I sit down to eat.
Well, we're here.
We're here.
First of all, thank you for having us in your beautiful office in the Lower East Side.
Thank you.
I'm here with the founders of Tillit.
It's a real working office.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're in the office, guys. So if there's phones ringing and you need to take it during the call, I would like that, because then we can just see how you work with your customers, and we can just answer it. Anyways, thanks for being here. We met at NRA in person for the first time, like a week ago, right? That's the first time we met in person?
Yeah, I was just trying to think about it. I was like, we hadn't met in person before. I feel like we met at Orify a million years ago when we were doing aprons for Melt.
Really?
Uh-huh. Remember going to Orify?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
100 years ago with Josh Morgan.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, because Josh Morgan brought you
Yeah.
in. That's crazy. Okay, so we did meet once, but that was a long time
But
ago.
that was
so
like
doesn't count.
another lifetime ago. But we really met again in NRA.
Yeah, and I'm going to sort of just have a couple of conversations that we already had again, because one, it was loud, there were drinks, and I heard most of it, but not all of it. So I would love to start with how you two met, and I believe it was in New Orleans.
That's correct.
Yeah, we were working at New Orleans Stalwart Commander's Palace, and I was in the kitchen. Jenny was in front of house, so sort of classic pairing. And yeah.
Who hit on who? Or was
Depends
it?
on who you ask, I guess, right?
Did somebody ask the other person out first?
I'm pretty sure I asked you out. You didn't ask me out. Yeah.
Definitely did not ask you out.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was a college student at Tulane. I'm like getting a little embarrassed. I feel my cheeks getting red. I was a college student at Tulane, and I was working front of house, and it was one of my it was the way that I was getting to eat fine dining food, and I used to go around to all the stations at the end of the night and ask for the chefs to cook me something. So that's why Alex is saying who flirted with who first. So I would say that I did go and flirt with Alex first and was like, can I have some of your soup? Can you make me that plate with the truffled mashed potatoes? But he definitely hit on me at the bar. And then again, when I was sitting at a coffee shop studying, he came in, rode up on his bicycle on the way to work and pulled up next to me. And that was how we really first started talking.
Was it right away? Like right when you met her, you're like, oh, I'm just going to start my pursuit?
No, I think we worked together for a little while. No?
Yeah.
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 What was it like working at Commander's Palace?
I mean, I had a fantastic journey in some respects and a tragic journey in other respects. It's a giant restaurant. Lots of people to learn from. Lots of very interesting food, obviously, a lot of history in that restaurant. And then it was also like a different era of kitchen in, the early aughts.
Well, when was this? What was the year?
So it was like 2002 ish to 2005.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
Katrina, essentially.
You said tragic? What was the tragic part?
Several things. I had a mentor that was, my first mentor in the kitchen, who was the CDC, who drove home drunk one night and crashed and died.
Jesus.
So that was a big piece and a really, hard thing to deal with.
How old was he?
He was young, 2 kids, married, lived across the lake. And
Oh my God.
just a tragic thing to see. So,
That's insane.
and then the fallout and, how people respond, whether they're, responded well, or in kitchens, it's hard to respond well because there's so many, things to get you through poorly with drugs and alcohol and those kind of things.
Well,
And
I mean, in kitchens too, like you don't really deal with the outside world? At least back then, it was there's no holidays or family issues. So like, what was that like in the
Mental
kitchen?
health was not a priority
No,
in 2002.
among many other things. Did you guys talk about it in the kitchen?
No, I mean, you talked about it at the bar afterwards a little bit. And, I think it was definitely not, what would happen now is that, your team, your ownership would sit down and like have conversations and maybe bring in someone to talk to everybody and like make sure that people are, finding their way through. And, I don't think that was necessarily a fault of the restaurant. I think it was a fault of the time that just didn't happen,
There weren't organizations like Southern Smoke and Ben's Friends that would help folks like Ethan, who obviously had a problem. And there was a lot of people with substance abuse issues, thinking back at it. And I worked at the restaurant at the same time, and there was this outside the funeral, there was no like cathartic moment for the team to really process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's tragic. Outside of that, what was the culture like at Commander's Press? I mean, it's an institution.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, they really cared about hospitality. And like, that was my first entree into understanding, like, this is a place where you make the guest experience and where you make their memories and where they will think about that meal and how they felt when they had this graduation dinner at Commander's Palace surrounded by their friends and family. And, the proprietors, Ella Brennan and Dottie Brennan, and now Lally and T. Martin really, I think, instill that and carry that on. And I like working front of house, watching them and how they interacted with guests and how they had the maitre d', and the maitre d' was the first person to really greet people. And you don't see that anymore. Like the art of the maitre d', I feel is sort of lost at this point. But really that was important to set the stage for the experience.
Have you been back? When's the last time you were back there?
We go to New Orleans, usually once a year at least. And there's usually a trip to Commander's in there.
Where else do you go when you go back?
We always try to do Clancy's as a favorite for a classic. I think Turkey in the Wolf for a sandwich. And then it's usually trying to, hit either customers, always hitting customers and clients and friends of Tillet. And then something new, I think in the last like 10 years, that the willingness for New Orleanians to embrace like a new type of cuisine has really opened up. Prior it was not that you had to have, classic Creole food on your menu or else you were just not a restaurant in New Orleans. And now there are things that are pushing boundaries within Mexican food, within Asian food, within sandwich culture, like all kinds of things that have really like spawned new ideas from younger chefs.
Yeah, Akamaya was the best meal I've had in a long time, which is Chef Ana Castro's new restaurant. And it's like blends Mexican food using local New Orleans and Louisiana ingredients. It was insane.
I love the food there.
Yeah.
Oh, so where do you go for po' boys?
Parkway. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Dom Elise, you used to like
I
Dom
like Dom
Elise's.
Elise.
You're a
Yeah.
Dom Elise's
Yeah, I
guy.
like Dom
People
Elise.
are very passionate about Dom Elise's. It's just,
Yeah.
if you go in the kitchen there, you'll have different feelings.
Yeah. I mean, look, I would not want to go to the kitchen, but the shrimp po' boy is pretty
Yeah.
Yeah, I dated one of the sandwich girls at Dumley's, so I stick with Parkway.
good. That's
I don't think I knew that.
Well,
Well, now I
you
know.
There we go. Let's talk about this girl you dated from Dom Elise's. How did you meet her? No, I was kidding.
No.
What about Giacomo's? Do you like
I
Giacomo's?
love Giacomo's.
I mean, is it like
It's
bad
fun.
to say that the alligator cheesecake is like my?
We had it at our
It's
wedding.
fun.
We
Black
love
and
it.
redfish is like, it's
Classic.
What is that thing, by the way? Like what?
alligator cheesecake? I have no idea.
It's
Don't ask
alligator
questions,
sausage,
right?
but yeah, don't ask questions.
It's-
But we literally had it at our wedding.
We did?
Really?
Yeah.
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 And
It's
their
so
fried
good.
chicken.
Yeah, and their fried chicken.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like cliche to say that place, but I love.
Krabby Jack's has often been one of our first
Yeah.
stops. Our youngest daughter is a gumbo aficionado, both from Alex cooking it for her and then from just visiting New Orleans. So we often do like a gumbo taste test every day with her to see which one she.
What
she
makes a
likes
good
the best.
gumbo other than the roux?
I mean, the roux is clutch, I think. I'm personally a chicken andouille guy over seafood. And I don't know, I think balance. Our winner last time, I think we had 5, and between Izzy, our youngest, and myself, Miss River, Alon Shaya's place,
Newest restaurant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
had the best one. And that was actually a duck gumbo, I think. I think
Yeah,
duck
but it was
and
a
That
sausage.
sounds
very
good.
dark roux. And
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
daughter said, this broth is the right broth.
How old is your
Loves the
daughter?
broth. She's
5.
5.
Your daughter is 5 and she eats
gets
gumbo.
it. Yeah, she gets it.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I wish.
8-year-old doesn't eat
Actually,
anything.
you know what?
So.
I think my 4-year-old would eat gumbo, but I don't think my
Yeah.
son definitely.
Yeah,
wouldn't.
the oldest one is still on the white food diet,
Oh,
so
yeah,
don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah.
And
Okay.
she's 8, so
That's good.
you
Yeah,
know,
my son is
don't feel
white
bad.
food, feta, bread. How did you end up in New York?
I moved to New York after I graduated from college. I got a job here, not in hospitality first, and yeah, so sort of a boring story for me, but now.
I came up in the summer of 2005 to do like a stage at Ariel, just as like a learning experience, then go back. And then in the fall of 2005 was Katrina. So everything shut down in New Orleans. Commander shut down for over a year. My apartment was gone, and so I just stayed.
So, hold on. Were you two not together when you?
No, we kind of just hooked up at the first meetings in New Orleans, for being honest about it. And then when he moved here for that summer, we reconnected, and that's when our personal and romantic relationship really started.
So, what was the sort of the spark of Tillet? I'm sure it didn't happen like all of a sudden.
It was definitely like a work in progress. So I went from being in professional kitchens to being a private chef. So essentially working with a bunch of people to working on my own. And when I did that, obviously the uniform needs changed. And I, was asked to wear a uniform of some sort. And so wearing the things that were available just felt off, especially when I was going out to the market, going to Whole Foods, going to the groceries, and walking around the streets of New York in, a chef coat and a classic chef coat that ill-fitting and a pair of check pants or whatever the clothes were at that time. And so I started, looking at other clothes, whether it was just stuff from J. Crew or street clothes. And, there was nothing that married the functionality of chef wear with streetwear. And so that was the spark. And then it was also, really fueled by the idea that like I was, in a very good place in my career. I was making a good amount of money for a chef, and I didn't feel good. I didn't feel proud with the clothes that I was wearing, and that was just a real disconnect for me.
Was there some sort of like fashion or design background or something that happened to you that catalyzed that? Like the idea that you just wanted to feel better in your clothes?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been into clothes. I think New York is, fashion capital. And so, and then, living in and being in the Lower East Side, I think it's such a, wonderful place for streetwear and for, interesting ideas around clothing. And then I had a friend, I still have a friend. She's been a wonderful support of the brand, and she connected me. She had worked in fashion. She was working at Kate Spade at the time and connected me with some of her friends. And one of them also sort of guided me through the process of making clothes in Manhattan and connected me with a pattern maker. So he was a Japanese men's workwear pattern maker, which was kind of a perfect fit for what I was thinking. And he just like immediately got my ideas. I'd bring him in these, rudimentary sketches of a chef coat or of a shirt, apron, pants. And he turned them into patterns that immediately worked. So,
what was the point when you guys decided you were all in? Like, this is okay. I'm going to stop doing everything I'm doing and just do this.
I think it was a trickle. It was a bit of a trickle. It wasn't just a single day. So we started, with having another job and ran it for about 6 months.
How did you sell the clothes?
Online, just set up a Shopify website from the beginning. I mean, Shopify has been an incredible platform that has, was not only easy to use then, but it has adapted really well over the last 12 years in, numerous ways, and growing with our brand and still being hyper functional. I think it was super easy, and without that technology, that would have been so much harder. I think that like having that accessible and easy to use really made it possible. I mean, the website, if you looked at it now, is probably junk, and I'm surprised that anyone bought stuff from us.
But
and the photos and all those things, but
I imagine you were also just selling locally to people here, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, I still had a decent amount of contacts in the industry, and so tested things on them for a while before we launched at all. Yeah, I think just word of mouth is how we've grown. I think it's still the biggest way that we grow is that people try the products, enjoy it, and especially then it was a very novel idea that you would have, a really cool pair of pants that you wore to work as a chef. Like before it was just you had, crappy pants that you wore to work, that everybody wore to work. That was just the thing. And then, somebody was like, oh, wow, those are interesting. Those are neat. And I actually like those. Let me tell my buddy about them. So it really traveled well like that, I think.
It's crazy when you think about, I don't know if it's this, I haven't been in kitchens in a while, but when you're working 80, 90-hour weeks, the vast majority of your time is spent in a kitchen. And if you're wearing, what Dickies or whatever, it's not super comfortable.
And chefs are still gearheads. So it's like people, obviously it's like people talk, and that's always been referrals for us. I think like 60% of our traffic is still literally organic and referral based.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, what's been the biggest change for you all, like starting now that you have a clothing company? Because this is not clearly what you set out to do, I presume, when you started in kitchens or in front of the house. Like, what is the biggest difference running this company from when you were in restaurants?
I think it's funny because I still say we work front of house and back of house, right? So I still more like, work on the sales and the marketing side and on the overall business. And Alex still does the design and the creative direction and runs the production. So I feel like in some ways we still have those roles, and it's still very team based, right? So I think there's a lot of teamwork involved, and we're still very much in the industry. Like I see ourselves as an extension of hospitality, and we say like our customers are guests in our dining room. And I think we just try to run the company like it's a hospitality business, and people are our partners, we're not their vendor.
My biggest difference is I sit down to eat. I go to sleep at 9:30 and I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So.
And holidays, and
I'm off on holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in Mother's Day
living
brunches.
the dream, but I'm still in hospitality.
Yeah.
I still get to enjoy the people that I love and the business that I love. But yeah, I sit way more.
Yeah.
But you don't like that necessarily.
Yeah, it's a balance.
Yeah, I have a hard time sitting when I'm doing things. I have to stand up. One of the things that in a restaurant is really difficult is obviously like being creative or innovative, whatever you want to call it, and then also being profitable. I have to imagine it's the same here. Like you want to do all these things. Is that something that's top of mind in what you're doing here, or is it something that it comes a lot easier?
100%. I mean, I think it's like the biggest challenge, and I like a challenge, and I think that's fun. If it was easy, it wouldn't be any fun. But one of the challenges for our brand is that we want to make really cool and interesting things and hyper functional things, obviously. But they all have to fall within a price point that people can purchase them, right? So we're not a runway brand that can have a $400 jacket. Like it just can't happen, right? So like you're working within parameters that are challenging at times, and so like pulling off something interesting and then still have it be at an attainable price point is a really big one. And I think we balance that with having like our core stock collection of things that you need for every day, and then the seasonal collections that we do that are just really fun. And those end up being a little bit more expensive, but I think that they're like sort of those collector's pieces that you can have, like a puffer apron,
Yeah, it's like we have to balance being a volume business with also still offering items that like surprise and delight and get the community excited, that your normal chefware brand wouldn't be providing.
Yeah, we got to start designing the jackets for Masa.
Yeah,
I bet they could have a $400 jacket.
Probably, yeah.
So I am curious, like about the I guess you'd still call it the R&D process when you're thinking about new things to design, like net new things, right? I'm sure you have other aprons that you make and things like that, other clothes. But what is the sort of impetus for like designing a completely new piece of clothing?
I think a big part of it is talking to the community. I think we've done that from the beginning, and I mean, I think what made us different as a workwear brand, as a chef brand, from the beginning was the fact that I had been in kitchens for 18 years before we started this. So I actually knew what people wanted. I knew how people were working. I knew it was missing. And as I've grown out of the kitchen and, like I said, sitting on my ass a lot more, we've increased how we tap into people that are working in the hospitality community. And that's everybody. And the community has changed quite a bit too. So there's things like women's workwear that were not as prevalent or not at all available when I was in the kitchen, and there are a lot more women in leadership positions and a lot more women in the kitchen in general. And so talking to people about what's necessary and what they want to see, and then developing from there. And we get a lot of ideas that are not feasible or not things that we're necessarily going to make, but then we get a lot that are also. And then we spend plenty of time developing them, and then we bring in that same community to test them before we finish it and put it out there.
What does that look like? How do you prototype and when you're testing, are you going to restaurants or?
Well, we start with ideas, and we, field those ideas with a survey from the chefs. And then essentially we start to build a pattern, a sample. Once we have a sample, we review it, obviously, to make sure that we like it, because we're not going to put anything out that we don't like, even if it's highly requested, and that it works. So it's a washing and wearing. And so we usually pick like one person just to wear the first sample and see how it feels. And from there, if we like it, then we move on to a broader set of samples, maybe a size run. This is sort of in reference to our women's chef camp. That was the most recent one that we've done this way. And we brought a bunch of people in to try on different sizes so that we could see how it looked on them, so we could see their expressions when they put them on. We could hear their feedback when they walked around and moved in them. And then if there's more edits to make, we make them. And then we go to full production. And usually when we do full production, we start small again, so that there's like another essential round of testing out there in the marketplace. And then if those sell and there's not a bunch of bad reviews coming back, or there's positive reviews, or there's reviews that the pocket's in the wrong place or something to that effect, then we adjust and go on to a bigger run. So it's a long process.
You can do that you can iterate like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, are there some like absolute hell no, we're never going to make this kind of piece of clothing?
Shorts.
Shorts? We haven't made shorts.
We what? You just made shorts again?
We have shorts coming out.
Oh, come
Seasonal
on.
collection.
That is so
even know.
surprising you say shorts.
Well, we had made chef shorts, like one in the very early years, and they did not sell well.
People keep asking for them,
people
but they don't buy them.
loved them, but then they didn't buy them.
How can you do the Cayman Island cookout without
While
shorts?
wearing
You
chef
gotta have
shorts.
shorts. Come on.
So every 3 years it's been about 3 years
It's gonna
since
be
we
the
brought
summer.
shorts. Yeah.
This is going to be the
about 3 years
summer
since
of
we
the
did
chef
shorts. Yes.
We're doing the seasonal collection as kind of like a hybrid with running, because the like increase in like chef and restaurant hospitality running clubs. So I think that this will be the year of the chef short.
Yeah, that makes
We'll
sense.
see.
Please buy the chef shorts,
Yes.
people. Please buy the chef
Are there
shorts.
are there like dream things you want to make that are more challenging or like tough to make work with costs that you really want to do but you haven't done yet?
I mean, people ask us for shoes all the time. So I feel like that's one that we've always wanted to collaborate on, but never gotten there. And shoes are really expensive and hard to make. And I'm like, we'll just focus on workwear.
Have you thought about equipment?
Yeah, to a degree. I think there's like pieces that we've had fun iterating on, like the cam cup or
Coon spoon. We did a coon spoon, which was fun with the collaboration. Again, I think those are things that we want, we're working on one with Silpat coming up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which will be fun for our pastry friends. And I think for equipment for us is like there's a lot of people who do it really, really well. And so
Yeah.
maybe there's things that we can do, put a little spin
Yeah.
on it for fun, but it's not like we want to also become,
Yeah.
a knife brand, for instance, or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, focus is like one of our core tenets of a business. And I think that, focusing on what we do really well. And then, like Jenny said, partnering with a brand that is really great at making knives, or partnering with a brand that is really known for their bags and their utility, or their shoes, or whatever it is. And I think you can't do everything really, really well, but I think you make friends with the people that can do it.
Yeah.
So
No, it's so smart. I have to imagine though that there's other industries that you could address, or that probably have come and said, hey, you make clothes for chefs. Can you make them for us? Like I said, my wife is a floral designer, and she was always like trying to find clothes for, she would go to these big events. And she'd have to have like, clippers on her and all these other tools and, gloves for like the flowers. And she would just buy like overalls and kind of retrofit them. I don't think they make clothes for florists, but I have to imagine there's other industries that have asked you.
There's so much space in hospitality too. It's, so I think like we look at hotel and think about how can we make housekeeping uniforms better? How can we make valet uniforms better? There's 12 million people employed in hospitality across the country. So there's a lot of other folks within hospitality that we can focus on first. And then people do, cross over anyways. It's like artists love the jumpsuits, photographers love the jumpsuits because they like that it's a one piece with all the pockets and the bells and whistles. So we naturally cross over into some of these other like industries.
Yeah.
Too.
Is there anything in the pipeline that people might not know about that you're working on?
We have a really exciting, at least I think it's exciting. It's a crossbody, like small bag that will be able to carry knives, tools, like a small amount of knives and tools, and then, an apron roll up, or it's a small bag. So we have a backpack now that you can put a ton of stuff in. You can go to the market, you put all your uniform and everything in there,
cool.
shoes. But this will be a smaller version. So if you're just doing a dinner party or you're doing an event and you want to bring a few things with you, that'll be coming out October-ish. Yeah.
Nice.
And that's one from the chef community with a chef friend who was saying, oh, I always use this sling bag. When are you guys going to make a sling bag? And we were like, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm so curious how you approach like the relationship now with the industry. I deal with this. Obviously, we service the industry as well, but on the tech side, which is definitely different, a lot less tactile, less touching of things. But we always want feedback. It is harder for us being, digital, right? But it seems like you can be in front of these folks all the time, and obviously they're our friends. But how do you keep that relationship up with the industry?
I mean, we believe in showing up in real life a lot, right? So we started a utility show partially for that. So we started an independent trade show for independent brands and restaurants that you guys were thankfully a part of this past year. So I think just being in community with people in person is huge, right? It's like hospitality workers don't sit home. They go to a restaurant every single day. So we have to show up for them too. So we try to show up at events and support events where we know the industry wants to be and where it matters for them. And that gives us a good way to, hey, what are you hearing? What do you want? What do you need? How can we better service you? So I think that's the strategy there where we get real feedback.
What did you learn this year? If we're going to retro the utility.
From utility?
Yeah.
What did we learn this year? I think that what I've really learned is that chefs and restaurateurs and up and coming ones really need business resources. So things like the pitch competition and supporting people in that way and providing like real community and learning experiences, whether you are a brand that sells clothing or some other service provider within the industry, is actually really important.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, that's so true. Well, we actually, we talked about this at NRA. I'm sort of bouncing around a bit, but I remember we were chatting about hiring cooks and service staff for your company. We, in the beginning, that's all we hired was cooks. Not a great idea for some roles, and a really great idea for others. And then, and then sort of everything in between. But how do you think about hiring for Tillet in terms of, do they need to have experience? Do you want to have a lot of experience? Is that over-indexed over other things if you're hiring for marketing or sales or something like that?
I think it's important, in all walks of life. And I think we talked about this too at the show, is that, I think for my kids even, I think that having some time in hospitality is just a requirement. It doesn't have to be a lot, but 3 months, 6 months, more, great. But I think that you can't really understand how people work in the industry. You can't go to a restaurant as a diner and understand what someone's going through on that day, and learn to treat people with respect and appreciation. And you really get that from being in hospitality. And I think that when we look at, hiring, it's not a requirement, but it certainly bodes well on your resume, even if it was a short stint as a hostess or as a bartender or whatever it is, so that you get it, right? Like you can't, be in our industry and do what we do and service the hospitality industry if you don't understand what people are going through and how they're working and how they're living their life.
Yeah, majority of our team members have worked in restaurants at some point, and I think that is important. And I think for us too, I don't think we have a hustle culture, but I like to see people who have hustle and just will figure anything out to get it done. And to me, hustle doesn't mean working 12 hours a day and grinding. It means just like having that, like, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to go and do it culture. And so for us, it's like having that hospitality culture and then having a little bit of like internal hustle.
Yeah. How would your team explain what Tillet is to to somebody on the street?
Like the elevator pitch wise?
Yeah, like not
Yeah.
you guys, because sure, I mean, you can if you want, but I'd love to, like, what do you think your team would say?
I think they would say that we're a premium hospitality workwear brand, making the best clothes out there. I hope. What do you say?
Should we ask them?
I mean, is there even another? I don't know of anybody else making.
I think the thing that's different about us is that we see ourselves really as this like full blown workwear brand, right?
Yeah.
So we're not just an apron company, or we're not, you know, like a commodity, like chef coat company. We really care about dressing people really well using premium ingredients from head to toe.
And the other big piece of what we are is that we are people of hospitality. And you don't see that in most of the other brands. And that was the big problem with why the industry didn't change when we started this company. I mean, the stalwart brands that I was wearing as a young cook were run by people in a high-rise office somewhere that had no idea about chef clothes. And you still see it today. I mean, you see like people coming in from other countries trying to like capitalize on New York market that don't actually work in the industry. They're just here to like make money off of the cooks and the people in the kitchen. So that's not us, and that'll never be us. And I think that the industry really knows who and why that makes a difference, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think of workwear right away, like high quality workwear, which I think is so interesting because, yeah, it isn't just aprons. It isn't just, one piece of clothing. And I don't think it's, for me, at least as a consumer, it's more than just like clothes for chefs. It feels like this new approach to workwear, which is really unique, I think. I can't think of many brands in any industry that do that. So it's really cool.
Thank you.
I'm curious how you think about, in terms of like running this company. We talked about this a little bit as well, like how you sort of delegate. You know, I know when I stepped into this tech company, I didn't know how to do anything in tech. I didn't know how to like build technology or what marketing was or sales or any of these things. But yeah, you have to manage these folks, right? I'm curious what you've learned about how to delegate and, you know, make sure that you're promulgating your vision for this, but then letting the experts do what they need to do.
I mean, I think we together very much divide and conquer and have very different skill sets. So have really learned that it's best for us to like stay in our lanes and be our subject matter experts, and then we respect each other and the team members who are able to do the other things that we're not good at.
And I think we're fortunate at the moment that we have really great team members that are able to work very independently, that seem to really love what they're doing. Maybe they don't in the back end, but they certainly seem like it when they're here. And I hope that they are happy and enjoying it. And I think like when you have a team that works that way, the delegation is not as challenging.
Yeah.
Because you feel very comfortable handing things over. I have a person, Allie, that I work with on the production side, and she's just like a rock star. And so it's like, you know, delegating to her is as simple as like, sharing my vision. It's almost like the guy that was the pattern maker when I started the business that just got it, you know, and that just makes it so easy.
What do you think is like the most surprising, difficult thing about this? I'm sure there are things when you started this, you're like, I don't know how we're going to figure this out. But now, fast forward, like what's really hard about this business that you didn't think would be hard when you started?
I mean, the world is fucking hard on this business.
Did
Pandemic, tariffs.
Did tariffs
like, those things
impact you
are
guys
like
a lot?
hard.
I mean, it's the things that are outside your control, I think are sometimes challenging, but then the thing is like you can't control them. So you just have to figure out how to always be like one step ahead. And we've been fortunate, you know, that Alex has done a really good job of like counter-sourcing factories. And so we have a pretty robust global supply chain now. And I think just staying ahead of like what you can with the economics. And the other thing that's more challenging that I didn't anticipate being challenging is like you're really responsible for people's livelihoods. And that is like heavy in a great way, in a very positive way. It makes you want to make sure you're providing the best for everybody. But
it's a great motivator.
Yeah. That was a motivator I did not expect.
Yeah. How do you measure success, independent of, you know, financial success and reviews? I'm sure you get like, how do you think about like quantifying this is working or it's not working?
I think success would be paired for me with like joy that I find from the business. And I think that I see that joy usually when someone's wearing the clothes that I'm not expecting, right? So if you're like, you know, just walking down the street in a different city and, you know, you see somebody going into a coffee shop and he's got a pair of Tillet pants on and they're using it the way it was intended, right? He's walking on the street. He's not at work, headed to work or whatnot. That just feels really special. I think we've had moments, and I still go back to like when we first made our women's chef code of like when, female chefs would come in, try on the coat and just have this like total sort of like eye-opening moment that like, oh my God, there's a coat made for me. It's not a 4XL men's thing that I'm going to have to roll up and twist around and tie in the back. Like those are the moments that feel like success, aside from, like you said, the financial and the number of employees that we can, bring in and those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, we started the company because we wanted people to feel proud during their work day. And like when you actually just happen to run into somebody wearing the clothes and they look really good and and you can tell that they're like happy and feel good. We were in Mexico City in February and we were walking down the street in Polanco and there was this adorable little ice cream shop and they were wearing these gorgeous colorful aprons and we're like, oh my God, those are our aprons in Mexico City. And they looked perfect in the space and everybody was like, they were vibing. And it was, it's like moments like that are like,
so cool.
Okay, yeah.
Actually, you know what? I have a question for you. What do your kids say that you do?
I think they know that we make clothes.
Do they refer to you as a clothes maker?
Yeah, they say, yeah. And they want to, they like love the business. And yeah, they say, so what our kids say is that Mama's on phone calls all day. It's actually, Mama's on phone calls all day and Papa cooks in the kitchen at Tillet and draws the clothes on paper. I think it's like what they think we do. Pretty much.
Inaccurate, yeah.
I mean, I haven't worked in kitchens since long before I had kids. I cook at home a lot, but my kids still like call me a chef. And it's like they even see me going to work. And they're often they'll say, "Oh, Daddy's going to work," but they
once a chef, you're always a chef. Right?
They just always. My daughter is always like, will say, "Oh, my daddy is a chef." I'm like, it's so weird that they think
they
that.
still refer to Alex as a chef too.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about that. I assume
cooler than a businessman. No,
yeah, that's for sure. What are your biggest influences in terms of design and creativity? I'm sure there are some chefs, but just generally, this is also fashion, right? So who are the people that influence you guys the most?
I mean, for me, it's the people on the street in the neighborhood and in the city. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the Lower East Side has got this streetwear culture that has just got a lot of history to it. It's also an interesting neighborhood in the sense that there's a lot of young people with low, moderate income that are still coming up with very interesting ways to wear their clothes. So there's a coffee shop down the street that I go to every day, and half my reason is to go for coffee. Obviously, the other half is to see what people are wearing. There's different neighborhoods where you get different things, right? You go to Tribeca or the West Village, and you're going to see like the designer labels and those kind of things. And those are fun and exciting. But to me, it's not as interesting. I like to see what people are doing, matching, pulling things from vintage or editing their clothes on their own. And I think those are the kind of things that are inspiring the big labels. And also, I think we try and take some of that and see what we can pull into our brand as well.
And then from a business side, to me, it's like, I want to be like Carhartt, right? So I think like how Carhartt has been adopted from construction workwear into like modern street style that you pretty much see all over the Lower East Side is something that I think we as a brand can aspire to.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I never thought about that. It's funny, in fashion, there is sort of this, I don't know, it's probably not the same with what you all do, but it is kind of similar to like the upper echelon of fine dining, where like the new innovative things happen, whatever, at Noma, right? And then 5 years later, you see people using garum in, the restaurant down the street. And it happens in fashion, right? A lot as well. I remember watching Devil Wears Prada where that, like you see that color that you're wearing. Right. That actually came from. Do you guys notice that, where there are things that you see like sort of downstream, like years later that you saw like a couple years ago that are now prevalent?
Yeah, I think it happens all the time in fashion, and in life. I mean, you're imitating the cool things out there, and
hopefully you all are the ones doing that now, and then you can.
Yeah, I mean, I like to try and do what we can to stay at the top of that and be the influencer. I mean, sometimes you're going to pick up things from other sources and get inspired by them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if that's what people want and that's what's exciting, then there's a difference between like copying someone else's designs and being inspired by something happening in fashion or food culture or whatnot.
I mean, I think we saw that with the jumpsuit when we launched the jumpsuit in 2016. So it's been almost 9 years, and we were like the first workwear brand. Obviously, Dickies has had a jumpsuit forever, but we were the first modern ones to do that. And then it's like then you saw it at like Madewell and at and then like brands like Alex Mill came out, and then that was their big piece. And that was after we had launched our workwear version in 2016 of like a better, more premium jumpsuit.
That's gotta feel good. I feel like you guys definitely influenced Madewell making that jumpsuit.
I don't know if we did, but it was just like
it feels good. I mean, there's parts sometimes where you're like a little annoyed if someone's, copying something, but then there's a lot of times where you feel like, oh wow, we like inspired something here.
I feel like in art or anything creative, everything is a copy of something else.
Sure.
It's everything is a derivative of something, from before. I mean, I'm sure there are some things that are net new, but like not much.
Not much in this day and age.
Not much. Yeah.
Let's talk about utility for a minute. I think I do understand more now why you started it, right? Just to connect more with the community. But how did it start, and what's the vision for it?
Yeah, it started. So, we had shown at the larger national trade show before and felt that we didn't really connect with our right audience.
You mean NRA?
Yeah, at NRA. And we felt like we had gotten lost in the sauce. And then, we didn't feel vision and values aligned after the pandemic and recovering from that. We felt like independence needed something different than was being represented. And there wasn't a space for that. So we took the budget from that we had been planning to use for NRA, pulled out of the show, and did sort of what we called our preheat. So the trade show light version, utility preheat, we called it. And that was in 2023, where we got some sponsors and tested out some of the activations that we wanted to test. Should we do the larger trade show? And for the same budget, we basically broke even and had like quadruple the impressions.
It's amazing.
Within that day. So from there, that was telling to us that, hey, we're onto something here. So 2024 was our first year of doing the full 2-day trade show. And then this year in 2025, we doubled the amount of exhibitors, the sponsors we doubled. And we had over like 1,100 people come through this year, attendees from the industry, gave away $20,000. And it was really fun.
Yeah, we basically took the same concept of why we started Tillet and transferred it to this like trade show event idea. And the idea with Tillet was that the people that were running, workwear were not involved and didn't care about the people wearing it and dealing with it, and felt same way about the trade show, is that it felt like this financial transaction that you were there to make them money, right? It's so expensive. The ROI was very hard to measure. It wasn't fun. The exhibitors didn't have fun. The people coming through didn't really have fun. It was a shopping event where you're like there on a mission to find something, to see something perhaps. And the same thing with the exhibitors. You're there on a mission to like sell something, to get customers, to like make a transaction. And I think that the big thing that we've done differently with utility is that everyone has a good time, and we're in it for everybody. Sure, it's a profit center, right? We're going to make money so that we can keep doing it. You have to do that in business. Otherwise, you won't have a business. But we make it's a fraction of the price for exhibitors. Exhibitors enjoy being there, it seems so far. The people that come are really having a great time because we're putting in all these other things. There's food competitions, there's free tattoos, there's music, there's like ways to connect and network, there's mental health services, there's, panels. I mean, it's more than just this transactional trade show that's happening on that really big level.
When will you start planning for next year? Like at what time?
We have our post-mort tomorrow. So basically tomorrow
it takes,
we'll start
takes
planning.
a
Give us a minute. Well,
yeah, I know. It just was last week. It's like a full-time job in and of itself, but it's really, I think, something impactful. And like Alex said, it's a real discovery platform for the industry. So we'll start really planning in earnest by the end of the summer.
Yeah. Is the name Tillit a derivative of utility?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Gotcha. Well, we're going to cook in a minute.
Yeah.
But I'd say let's leave this on some advice because, in the restaurant industry, there is a path to just cook for the rest of your career. And there's lots of people that do that and do it well. But there's also tons of opportunities to do other things. And we're both sitting here as, representatives of that. I would love maybe if you could share like some advice for folks that are cooking now or in front of house now in service, that are in restaurants, that want to do something different. What you would tell them?
don't be afraid to ask people for advice, and don't be afraid to just chat with people about your ideas and seek out community and mentorship. And that's how you really learn and grow your network.
Yeah. And I would say, I agree with all that. And I would also add that, that there's lots of low risk, low cost ways to test out your idea, your concept, whatever it may be, whether it's a new chefware brand or something interesting in tech. I think there's ways to do it, and to really be resourceful and creative in that way, so that you can try it without getting in over your head and making something that's like, a real high risk situation, which most like new restaurants are that. So I know that's daunting to a young entrepreneur wannabe, is the risk. And so there's lots of ways to be creative and avoid some of that risk. So I would say do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like folks in restaurants, I come from the kitchen, so I'll be a little bit biased here, but I'm sure it's on both sides. For sure, on both sides, front house, back of house, are uniquely qualified to do things like this. High stress environment. You have to understand hospitality. Obviously, you have to work your ass off. You have to be really organized. You have to understand mise en place and how to plan. And you're not going to make a lot of money for a long time. It's a restaurant. It's going to be the same thing if you start a business.
Sure.
So you're basically like already set up for most of the things. The hardest thing is really just decide, yes, I can go and start this. And I love that you guys did. And thank you for what you've built. It's amazing. And it is inspiring. It really is, like what you guys are building. I know you're just getting started. So I'm excited to see what next year's utility is, and what you guys do when you come up with your shorts.
A pair of shorts is coming to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's cook.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.